have every day people telling you that you're useless. You're stupid. All of these horrible things. You start to think, is it true?
And when you're a star, they let you do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy.
Still seen as subordinate and weaker and all of that stuff. So with that comes the issue of harassment and the way that it affects women more than it affects men.
You wouldn't have your job if you weren't beautiful. It's very sad.
I think gender does have a lot to do with the difference in the levels of abuse that men and women get for writing much the same things.
It's like in a state of shock.
I'm not thinking, Mr.
That's
President.
okay, I know you're not thinking. You never do.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
Just wanting to call the police and just kind of give a heads up because there's been quite a lot of abuse online and stuff.
If there is one thing I know for certain, it is that this has to stop.
Female journalists receive around 3 times as much abuse as their male colleagues, and a woman reporter or politician is attacked on Twitter every 30 seconds in the UK or the US. I met with female journalists across the west of Scotland to see how they cope with daily abuse. I first stopped off in Ayr to meet with print journalist Angela Haggerty, who has been the subject of abuse so severe, one man ended up in prison.
I first started journalism as an accident when I started volunteering at a local community radio station, and then went from that on to college, and then went into a business magazine, and then went into Scottish news and politics via Common Space, which I was the founding editor of, and then took a column in the Sunday Herald and went on to be news editor of the Sunday Herald. Much like any media career, it's very varied and fun and lots of changes.
Angela became the centre of abuse around 6 years ago after editing Phil McGillibon's book Downfall, which focuses on Rangers Football Club going into administration. An online petition was set up by a fan to get her sacked from the Herald, which got almost 3,000 signatures. When she announced online that she had lost her column at the paper, she received a huge backlash of attacks on Twitter.
There's people just celebrating, laughing. This one was particularly nasty. A few people suggested I should have went to the police with this. The Erskine Bridge is always open, which was basically someone telling me to commit suicide. This makes me happy. A bit of Sloop John B to celebrate. Sloop John B is the tune that Rangers fans sing the words of the Famine song to, which is a racist song that's been banned. No cunt cares, and it's not because you're a woman like you're trying to portray, it's because you're a prick.
I spoke with therapist and counsellor Dominic Douglas to help understand how these horrific comments may impact Angela's mental health.
It takes a brave person to be a journalist in some ways. You know, she was covering a something which is very emotive, because you're treading with some folks' lives who live for their cause. And their cause can be a football team.
When you find yourself in the middle of a storm like that, I think the first thing is shock more than anything else. You don't really quite understand what's going on or how you're supposed to deal with something like that. The fact that it's all a very public thing as well and other people can see it, it's quite disorientating. You're not really sure how to assess or understand what's happening.
There's going to be an effect on self-esteem, an effect on your confidence, ability to engage, and in fact most people would probably start to withdraw from society, withdraw from normal things, because they don't know where this bitterness, this anger is coming from.
The length of that thread, there's 4 pictures in each tweet, and it goes on 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 and it goes on. And if that's happening every day, like, how do you not get to the position where you're sitting thinking, is it me? Have I done something am I just a horrible person and that's why I'm getting all this?
They don't care how much hurt they cause you, how much pain you're causing. For them, it's a laugh. It's that humiliation, that fact that somebody thinks they can humiliate you, they can, they show you such disrespect.
So it took a period of time for it to really hit me properly. I mean, for a few years I was kind of okay somehow, and people used to remark to me and say, how can you look at your Twitter feed and have you seen what people are saying about you and online or at the bottom of articles that I'd written? It was just constant, it was everywhere. And other people would bring it up with me as in, are you sure you're okay? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm fine. I just, I don't bother with it. I don't pay any attention to that stuff. And it was only within, I think, the last year or so that I realised that wasn't true, that it actually had started to have an effect. It was making me really anxious.
Angela believes employers could do more to support women who are struggling with harassment. She turned to the National Union of Journalists for help.
I'd say to women who are experiencing this stuff to try and make sure that they've got some strong support networks, to reach out to other women like me that have experienced this kind of stuff, because we should be supporting each other, to use their union, for example. I've got the National Union of Journalists, they've been really supportive.
The NUJ has around 38,000 members across the UK and Northern Ireland. They support both journalists as well as bloggers and freelancers who do not have the same representational rights. John Toner is the NUJ Scottish organiser.
Personally, I assisted Angela a few months ago when she announced on social media that she was no longer working for the Herald. And there was, I think, what is normally termed a Twitter storm of terrible, abusive tweets which attacked her on a sectarian basis. They attacked her on a political basis, but worst of all, they attacked her as a woman in very, very aggressive sexual comments about her, which were completely unacceptable.
If there was a Twitter storm kicked off, then I would tend to immediately start feeling anxiety building and find myself feeling really stressed out, and I just felt a bit more depressed and bleak.
We put out a statement, a very strong statement, defending Angela from this and saying that this kind of abuse is just not acceptable, and no journalist of any gender should have to put up with that.
Jennifer Jones is another female journalist and academic who's been targeted by online trolls. However, she feels she would be safer defending herself.
For the last 10 years I've been a researcher looking at citizen journalism and how social media is used in terms of creating an alternative media and how that interacts with the mainstream media, so how it's transformed the way we think about journalism and media and also how we access media. My thoughts on the NUJ in this are that the NUJ, I'm a member of the NUJ, I'm a member of Women in Journalism. I don't think the NUJ do enough, and I think they pick and choose who they support.
After publishing an article in the Herald about online bots, she found herself in a wave of harassment when her personal details were plastered all over social media.
There's times when I had to take my Twitter account offline because they published my mum and dad's address and they published their birth certificate. And these are normal people, I'm not talking they're these sort of spy agents that are trying to discredit you. These are normal people who are angry at the state of the world, and they think by sending me abuse somehow balances it out. Today I'm getting stuff, but it'll be one person, and then you've got a flood in your mentions, and the momentum grows. But what I've done is just turn my mentions off for a bit, and that's me learning when to engage and when to pull back. When my pal messaged me, was upset because my friend seeing messages about her pal on the internet and not understanding what that was, that's when it broke me.
When I met with Jennifer, we had to stop our discussion as she received an abusive email, ironically from another journalist. She was running an event on miscommunication, and a male reporter had threatened to turn up to hold a counter-protest. She phoned the police as she was worried about what he might do after sending her this.
Hi Jeff, how's things? Thought I'd get in touch and ask a simple question. Do you actively enjoy looking incredibly shifty? Have you not responded to my requests and clarification and you blocked me? I see you removed your address from your website.
This was a first-hand insight into how online harassment can affect female journalists.
I can feel my anxiety levels going up. If I was wearing a heart monitor, I can feel it. Getting an email like that is deliberately provoking.
The next journalist I met was Eve Livingston. She's won awards for her work and was named in Scotland's 30 Inspiring Women Under 30 list last year.
I've mostly worked freelance, so I don't have much experience inside newsrooms and things like that, so I can't really talk to the kind of harassment issue as much, but certainly kind of online abuse related to things that I've written, because I tend to cover kind of politics and current affairs, which I think is one of the real hotspots for that kind of abuse. So, and particularly if you write things about women and feminism, which I have done. So there's been certain things that I've written where I've had a real kind of vitriolic response from men, and a lot of quite sinister kind of abusive messages and that kind of thing.
Eve is also the Secretariat for Women in Journalism Scotland, a networking and training organisation which aims to empower the position of women within the media across the country.
The things that come up for us a lot are issues around pay, so the pay gap, the kind of promotion of women into more senior positions. So we don't have many female editors in Scotland at all, in newspapers at least. The issue of harassment at work, we did some research last year into the experiences that women had had in the workplace, and we found that there was widespread sexual harassment within women's kind of career histories.
Jan Patience is a member of Women in Journalism who thinks social media can be a playground for online trolls.
It was a different landscape when I started out. It was mostly newspapers, either newspapers or broadcasting you went into. I started in print journalism in a magazine, and worked in all sorts of different areas of the media. When I was working in newspapers before social media, they were very aggressive environments. So you would get, aggression in the workplace from senior members of staff, usually, mostly men, giving you a really hard time. And then you get readers phoning up and berating you as well. So I think that's just translated itself into social media.
It appears social media plays a large role in allowing women in the public eye to be targeted.
We see it on Twitter a lot, that people will get abuse and report the tweet and the messages, and they'll get a message back saying this hasn't broken any of our rules. When you look at the content, it's quite clearly unacceptable. So I think it's just such a new kind of problem in the grand scheme of things that workplaces and these platforms are still scrabbling with how to actually deal with it.
That has certainly made it much easier. Before social media existed, if you wanted to complain about a journalist, you would write a letter to the editor, and obviously if your letter was abusive, it wouldn't be published, whereas now people can go online and publish their own thoughts. And there are a lot of people out there for whom social media is a very convenient way of abusing people.
We have discussed it in several forums and networking events we've had, and we're also planning an event based around social media and how to deal with it, and how to deal with negative comments on social media, how to equip yourself. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the answer is of where you should go for help, but I think the support of your peers is always worthwhile.
This seems to be a relatively new problem, which means not many female journalists know how to deal with it.
I would also say to women that are keen to become journalists, or that they're starting out in their career, you have to be prepared that this might happen to you, because it seems to be a byproduct of being a woman that we are in more receipt of this than men appear to be. So you have to make sure that you've got your strategies worked out before it happens, so that you know how to deal with it when it does.
I think it's getting taken more seriously now. We've had instances in Scotland where female journalists have had physical threats and like bomb threats and things like that, which are obviously unacceptable. And I think in those cases the police have responded. I don't know whether those people would say that the police response was good enough, but they've certainly kind of been there and tried to deal with it. But I think it's just that issue of it being such a new problem that there just isn't the infrastructure in place for how to deal with it. We're all still figuring out how to respond, I think.
I think you have to kind of call it out when you see it, and turn it on its head and be quite clever, because we are good with words. We should be able to fight back on that basis. But sometimes it's so nasty and really hellish stuff that's coming out of people. You just shouldn't even say anything.
I think people are being more believed and taken more seriously than they were, because everyone recognises now that it is an issue, but just in terms of how we actually deal with it, there's still a lot of work to do.
Go to other organisations, Scottish PEN for me, the PEN organisation, these exist all over the world. There are organisations that want to protect free speech and want to protect journalists. Link up with them, they will support you, they will do what they can to help, and we're going to have to just work together over a period of time for the necessary changes to happen. They're not going to happen overnight.
I think you should always remember that it's not acceptable and it shouldn't just be part of your life, because I think it can be easy to just think that's what journalists have to put up with, and it shouldn't be. You've got every right to be very upset and affected by that and to try and get help for it. Build yourself a network of other women who kind of know what you're going through and will be supportive when something happens. And do what you can in your workplace to try and make sure that those issues are taken seriously. Speak to people in senior management positions and ask what they're doing about protecting their staff against that, and speak to social media platforms and ask what they're doing, and just do what you can, I think, to try and get it taken seriously.
One thing that's clear is that this is a gendered issue.
I think being a woman it seems to aggravate it for journalists and women in any manner of the public eye right across the spectrum. Just by the fact that we're women, it seems to bring out a certain type of rage among men predominantly.
I would say that female journalists tend to be abused by men rather than by women, and there tends to be men who gang up on a particular female journalist and use sexual language and sexual abuse. Yes, these are clearly just women haters who are seizing an opportunity to pile hatred on a woman for whatever reason, whatever motivation. They're getting something out of it.
Yeah, I think it's just a symptom of the position of women in society in general. So, we've made progress, but women are still discriminated against. They're still not paid the same as men. They're still not treated the same as men.
When people are abusing female journalists, it can get much nastier. It can get very aggressive and very misogynist. There is no question that certain people who want to abuse female journalists very quickly abuse them in hateful terms.
Somebody wants to attack, well then they go for the easiest target. So they're not going to pick a 6'3" reporter who goes to the gym every day. They're going to pick somebody who they think they can down to.
I think men probably get criticism and they probably get some mean, abusive comments, but I think the sheer kind of volume and type of comments that women get, it is very much a gendered issue.
Bomb threats, rape threats, the things that female journalists face for simply doing their job. But there's a bigger problem here. It's not just female journalists who are discriminated against, it's women across the world. In 1920, women gained the right to vote. 1964, they gained the right to equal pay for equal work. 1978, and it became illegal to discriminate a woman because she's pregnant. 1994, the Violence Against Women's Act was created. 2016, the military ended its exclusion of women from combat jobs. Now it's 2019, and women are still having to march and fight for equality. Every year since 1911, women across the world have gathered together on the 8th of March to celebrate International Women's Day. This year, women flooded the streets of Edinburgh to protest for their rights. Lorna Frost is a Women's Day campaigner who also works for Abortion Rights Edinburgh. She hopes these protests will help to end the discrimination.
On Friday, it was a really big march. There must have been it must have been about 800 or 1,000 people there. And what I hope is that march radicalises a lot of women. They may go along just as a kind of celebration of it being International Women's Day, but being on it makes them think about certain issues more deeply and maybe choose to get involved in other campaigns throughout the year, because that's what's needed. There are a lot of issues that have to be addressed. The women who came on the march, they feel great because they see all these other women who've thought about it and have gone out on a pretty nasty March evening to shout about these things. That feels really empowering as a woman.
Mary Williamson is part of a feminist group who thinks small changes could help overcome sexism.
We want to encourage men as well to be part of us, so we're not different. And we're here today as a group called Fanny Riot, and we are basically here to spread a bit of fun and a bit of joy in amongst all the women today. Just basically discriminated against without meaning to be discriminated against, and I think that's the problem, and there's no appropriate way at that moment in time to actually approach that problem without it becoming like, oh well, you're having a bit of a huff or like Camp Doonhead. So I think this is the big problem. It's the everyday sort of issues that men cause against women.
Despite progress, women are still fighting for equal pay across the world.
The strike in Glasgow that went on for 12 years that the women won recently, a 12-year battle to get equal pay by some of the lowest paid workers in the community. And that just shows how even here, how much women have got to struggle to assert the rights that they've been given even. I mean, they have these legal rights, but employers have ways of getting around them and things like that.
Lorna believes discrimination in the workplace may be harder to overcome.
I'm a bit more pessimistic about issues like that being really sorted out, because I think they're issues for men as well, because they're power issues, and we are, as people, we play with power. Sometimes we want to dominate, sometimes we accept being dominated by other people. They're very subtle things.
But Lorna stresses not to forget the progress that women have already made.
I think we're among some of the luckiest women in the world here, that we have, because of the rights that we have. But I think we can't rest. We have to work to protect what we've already achieved. There are always people who are trying to turn the clock back and restrict women, to take back some of the rights that we've won.
As well as campaigning, Lorna designs textile patterns inspired by women's rights and the struggle which they face.
I put the trust women in here. This is like in the tradition of samplers and things like textile art that women have done for hundreds of years. And then down here, I've got some other things like stop, collaborate, listen.
The Me Too movement seemed to be a shift in the right direction for women, unveiling the extent of sexual harassment across the world.
Me too. Me too. Me too. Me too.
I mean, I have the usual women's history that in the past I've been touched by men inappropriately when I was a young girl and things like that, when I wasn't strong enough to say no. Sort of Me Too moments.
Lorna was asked by The Guardian what International Women's Day means to her. She responded with a poem.
Guardian social team Tom asks why International Women's Day means so much to me. Well, it means hope in a world of 4x4s, refugees and oil spills. It means hope in a land of 12-year equal pay battles and flourishing food banks where broken folk need vouchers for beans and porridge. Yes, hope in a new town of train spotters, blanketed beggars and anti-choice vigilantes. In a community of 15-minute scare visits where the part-time library says closed or closed till 1 or closed after 1. This list is incomplete. The true list is too long to list, an umpteen paragraph essay. There are lives on the lines and between the lines. There is sorrow and suffering. It's a list that's too easy to add to. In Argentina, Lucia, an 11-year-old, raped by her grandmother's partner, is refused an abortion. It is International Women's Day every day, and we are not just fighting for our rights, we are fighting for all our lives.